In late 1996, the first 3D wrestling game to hit the Sony PlayStation was released. No, it wasn't a WWF game, and believe it or not, it wasn't even a WCW game. It was Power Move Pro Wrestling, and it doesn't even feature any wrestlers from either of those promotions. The game has a few known Japanese wrestlers in it with changed names for copyright reasons, but also features some pretty goofy original characters. The action is pretty simple to get into and it feels familiar, and that's because a few of the game's developers went on to later work on the SmackDown series. It feels like a mix between SmackDown and World Tour, or maybe even WCW versus the World. X is strike, circle is how you perform grapple moves, and square is run along with Irish whip. Also, triangle initiates submission holds, and L1 and R1 are your taunt buttons. You can also rotate the camera with the L2 and R2 buttons. I'm not sure why this was included in the game, as it just makes things a little difficult. Graphically, the game doesn't look too bad for a fully 3D wrestling game released in '96. It's a little blocky as far as polygons go, but overall, a good effort. The crowd looks pretty 16-bit era, and there's not a whole lot of arena detail, but again, I've seen worse for sure. Like Thunder, for instance. It is pretty impressive to see a referee in the ring, though. This didn't become commonplace until a lot later in wrestling games. The sound is just there. The music is forgettable and the sound effects are pretty standard. Sometimes a fan will shout something out like your wrestler's name and it just sounds pretty goofy. And speaking of goofy, the ring announcer is actually pretty entertaining.
Some say he's 6 foot in height, possibly 240 pounds. The man the government denies, Area 51.
There are 4 venues and rings to choose from, some outside and some indoor arenas. Just having an option this early on is pretty impressive. There aren't a whole lot of wrestlers to choose from, nor are there a lot of moves. In fact, this game might not keep your interest for very long, but for the simple fact that this was the first 3D wrestling game made, I think it's worth a look.